last one we did was, right, to not torment people verbally. And we said that includes parents, wives, and children, and anybody, and this is probably one of the harder mitzvahs to keep is to not say the wrong things to the wrong people, or to the right people at the wrong time, the wrong people at the wrong time. And it's just the mouth runs. That's why the Gemara says why the mouth has a double covering. You got a layer of teeth and a layer of lips in order to think twice before you speak. That's the rule. That one should think twice before. I actually met a man, one person that I knew, a good friend of mine, who was nifter, but he had this annoying habit of not answering immediately when you spoke to him. He actually thought before he spoke, which is just a very, very rare commodity. So, in life in general, just think before you speak. Right? Somebody once said, a closed mouth gathers no feet. Never heard that. A closed mouth gathers no feet. That means, if you, there's always this foot extraction, the foot extraction machine that they could use. There's this one woman, a woman was pregnant in her 7th month, and she had a child who was had some sort of visible genetic defect that she was walking with. Was about 2 years old, 3 years old. She was pregnant in her 7th month, and some woman stopped her on the street and said, "Well, aren't you worried that the next one's going to be like this one?" So this woman, to her credit, said to her, whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me, that's for the best. But you understand that somebody let this first woman out of her cage, and you could actually go around, you could hurt people like that. And all it takes is one word. You could make people's day. It says, Mavis v'chayim biyad halashon. The pasuk says, life and death is in the hand of a tongue. You could literally change a person's day, especially females, with the right word or a wrong word. You say the right timed word. Your wife, you come home, your wife say, I had a bad day. All you got to say is one thing. Wow, the house looks so clean, right? You change her whole day. You do just one positive thing, one negative thing, and you could ruin it. And that's a rule in life in general, especially women who are very, very subject to either flattery or criticism, right? And if you think they're not, that just means you're not married. They are very subject to flattery. They're very subject to criticism. And in general, a person has to be extra careful not to just to keep their mouth under wraps. I heard about a couple once went to visit. Guy goes to visit. This terrible story. I love it. Guy goes to a couple goes to visit their friend. So Bill comes to the house with his new wife, and Tom is there. He's the host, and they're sitting there at the table and they're talking. And Tom's wife excuses herself to go upstairs to check on the baby. And she calls down, Tom, can you help me up here? So Tom goes upstairs, and his wife says to him, what happened to Bill? How did he pick such a loser? And she wears too much lipstick. She doesn't stop talking for a minute. She only thinks about herself. She just got, and she just, for about 10 minutes, she just really cleans up. Okay, she feels better. They go back downstairs. And there's silence. There's an uncomfortable silence in the living room. And the only sound is the crackling sound of the infant monitor, which they had left on the dining room table. Now exactly how to, well, I meant selfish in a good way. Exactly how do you get out of it? You understand? And there, the mouth is a very, very dangerous weapon. There's a woman, when I was growing up, there's a woman who used to come to the house. My younger brother recalled her Jaws. Remember the movie Jaws? That he called her Jaws, because she almost reminded me of one of those. You ever see those little toy teeth that keep going to chattering teeth on the table? my brother referred to her as Jaws. So that's the mitzvah. The next mitzvah is to not cheat a convert in money matters. Okay, and again, the Torah always speaks in terms of converts because converts are more vulnerable because they do not have a support system. Oh, by the way, just interestingly enough, did you ever hear of Avram ben Avram, the righteous convert of Vilna? Avram ben Avram, the Ger Tzedek. There was a man named Avram. I forgot his first name, but he was came from a very high-ranking family in the Catholic Church. And one day he got interested in Judaism, and somehow he came across the Vilna Gaon, the Gaon of Vilna. And they got involved, and the guy decided he wants to convert to Judaism. Now, the church put him to the Catholic Church in the 18th century wasn't too happy about high-ranking Catholics converting to Judaism, And they made him an offer. They were ready to bribe him and give him everything, this, that, and the other. And he said, no, he wants to become Jewish. Then the church eventually, they turned sour, and they said, he became a fugitive. They were going to kill him. So he ran away, and he was hiding. And he was hiding in a small shul in a small town. Now, there were these little kids who came in, little Jewish kids came in, and they kept tormenting him. You're just a wannabe, and you're not really Jewish, and you're this, that, and the other. This was after his conversion. He never answered. One day he said something, he had enough, and he finally lashed out at the kids. So one of the kids came home to his father, and his father showed up in the shul and said, I'm going to teach you a lesson you're never going to forget. The father informed him to the Catholic Church, and they captured him. So when they had him, he was at they took him out to burn him at the stake. And in those days when they burnt when they burnt a Jew at the stake, or the Jews all bolted themselves up in their homes because they could easily lead to pogrom. Once things get loose. Now, according to a documented legend, even the book, there's a famous book on the life of the Vilna Gaon, but even in the book it says it's not confirmed. But the book mentions that according to legend, as he was walking to the pyre to be burnt to death, and they kept giving him a choice. They said, it's not too late. And he said, no, I'd rather die as a Jew than live with falsehood. So as he was walking there, he passed the window of the Vilna Gaon, and he said to the Vilna Gaon, on the one hand, the Talmud says that a person should run to do a mitzvah. If you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, hurry up to do the mitzvah. On the other hand, it says a person should try to prolong his life as much as possible. So should I walk quickly to my execution in order to run to do the mitzvah of dying al Kiddush Hashem, or sanctifying God's name, or should I walk slowly in order to prolong my life as much as possible? So the Vilna Gaon apparently told him that since this is a mitzvah that does not come up that often, you should walk quickly to the pyre, and he was burnt to death. He was burnt to death. So at the way that ended up getting the reason they found him is because he was informed on, because the guy had started tormenting him. That's what it could lead to. That's how careful. That's why the Torah talks in terms of converts. To his credit, when he was on when they were about to execute him, so one of the monks were making fun of him. So one of the monks said to him, "Listen, we're killing you in this world, but you'll get even with us in the world to come." So Rabbi Avram, he changed his name to Avram ben Avram. He said to the monk, "Look, I want to tell you something. Imagine a kid is on the beach and he builds a sand castle. Another kid comes over and he smashes his sand castle. So the kid swears he's going to get revenge. Now imagine 20 years pass and he sees that kid. Do you think he's thinking about revenge for that sand castle, which was so insignificant so many years ago?" He says, in the world of truth, he says, you could burn my body. My soul will be in the world of truth, and in the world of truth I'll have so many more, because the last thing I'm going to be thinking about is getting even with you. He said, and I will not rest and plead, and I will not rest in the world of truth. I will plead and beg in the world of truth that Jew who informed on me, I will not stop pleading until I manage to get him out of Gehenna. That's what he said. So when he was burnt to death, and then they buried his, they collected his ashes, and his ashes were buried in the cemetery in Vilna. And then in the 1950s, the Russians decided to build a gym or a highway or something right through. Jewish cemeteries are always a great place for highways. And so they exhumed the body of the Vilna Gaon, which was still intact 180 years later. He died in 1797. This is 1950. His body was still very heavy. So they exhumed the Vilna Gaon's body and the ashes of Avram ben Avram. They couldn't move them to everybody in the cemetery, and they moved them into a separate, and they're apparently in the same, what's it called? What's it called? Catacomb. The two of them are in the same catacombs. That was Avram ben Avram. That's where this could lead to. Okay, now the next mitzvah is to not cheat a convert in money matters. Now, it applies to all Jews, but again, converts are more vulnerable. Now, this gentleman we have to spend a little time on, because they make a joke. It's not a funny joke, but they say it's one of the thinnest books ever written. One of the thinnest books ever written is Jewish business ethics. And along with Italian war heroes, German humor, and English cuisine. These are among the thinnest books ever written. So it's unfortunate that Jews have been labeled a certain way when it comes to it. I want to tell you something. When somebody's called a shrewd businessman, chances are he's doing something. He's a shrewd businessman. Chances are he's doing something inappropriate. That's what a shrewd businessman means. It means that you're not on the up and up. And the halacha is that you have to be completely on the up and up when it comes to business. And for one thing, you're not allowed to create any sort of false impression. So for example, let's say you're selling your car. You got a used car. The halacha is you cannot paint your car to make it look less used than it is. You could paint it to make it look nice, but then you have to tell me that this is 14 years old. You can't paint it and just show here, you want to buy a used car, and let me look at the car and think, oh wow, this looks like about a 5-year-old car, and then sell it to me under those impressions. You can't do that. You have to let me know. If you painted it, then you have to let me know that this is a 14-year-old car. You are not allowed to do anything that creates a false impression, number one. Number two, you're not allowed, for example, if you're selling fruit at a supermarket, you are not allowed to put the good fruit on top and the little bin, the bad fruit at the bottom. So that a customer comes over and says, hey, wow, just loads up the fruit because he sees the good fruit. You're allowed to tell me that there is faulty fruit here, right? You'd have to tell me. You're not allowed to polish fruit to make it look better than it is. You could polish fruit and tell me this is grade B, we polish it to make it look like grade A. That you could do. You can't do anything at any way, at any level, that involves any sort of deception. And the rule of thumb in these things is that if you're hesitant to tell me about it, then you shouldn't be doing it.
So that's like dyeing fish as well.
What's that?
Dyeing fish red, like a lot of people make fish redder than it is.
They do?
Yeah, they do that with
salmon.
Salmon, yeah.
What, the pink salmon is not naturally pink like that?
No.
I know hot dogs they put in, what do you call it, and salami they make red, and a lot of things they do. See, they're the truth of the matter. Even milk, I just read, even milk in the United States, they put something in the milk to make it look whiter, to give it a whiter white. Right, the FDA is now examining it. They make the milk look whiter. Ketchup is obviously a white pulp until they put in red in order to make it look like. Say, we think that it's good. They use some really good red tomatoes here, but they didn't use no red. They may use red tomatoes. It comes out white till they put in the food coloring. So there it depends what people are used to. You understand? So you're like fish, for one example would be if you put in water. You have to say what the water content is. Sometimes they weight it down in water. They'll tell you, like, if you buy a pound of meat, a pound of frozen meat, what you could expect the water content to be. That you'd have to be told. Sometimes they used to water down the milk. There's a famous story about a rabbi calls in the milkman, and he says, Herschel, the local milkman says, Herschel, what percentage of water do you use to water down the milk? Rabbi, I don't water. He said, Herschel, listen. There's a look. A woman came to me today, and she's cooking meat for her family, and some milk spilled into the meat. Now, I have to determine if there's 60 parts meat to milk, but that's only to milk, not to the water that's added to the milk, and therefore, her meat depends on you. Like, Herschel, come on, just tell me what percentage you water it down, because we both know you water it down. Say, okay, Rabbi, 26%. So we all know, but push came to shove. So now you got to tell me. So that's the halacha. The rule is anything that you are hesitant to talk about, generally it's wrong. Remember we once spoke about this instead when it comes to the mitzvah of stealing. Are you allowed to sneak in? Are you allowed to bring a guest into the health club with you? Oh yeah, they like when we bring in guests, right? Well, just ask them. A card says it's not transferable. Sometimes membership cards are not transferable. Well, my cousin is visiting, and anyway, I almost never use it, and I pay them a lot of money. Just ask them. You can't make the rules as you go along. They make the rules, not you make the rules. And so when it comes to business, you have to be very, very, you have to be very, very, what do you call it? Now, part of just keep in mind, when it comes to money, you ever hear the word kesef? The word kesef. You know what the 3 letters stand for? The word kesef is money. Also, silver is really kesef, but kesef is made up of 3 letters. There's a chaf, the letter chaf in Hebrew, okay, which stands for the palm. It's a kaf. My hand is a kaf, okay? Maybe that's why, because you could curl it like that. A pei is a mouth, right? The final letter. And a samach is round, which represents the head. So you have 3 letters here. You have the hand, the mouth, it means action, speech, and thought make up the word money. Because in speech, action, and thought, we are very focused on money. Money has a very strong pull for us. In speech, thought, and action, we're focused on money. And even more than that, the word kesef comes from the Hebrew word desire. We have a yearning. It means yearning. When Lavan, you remember the story in the Torah when Yaakov Avinu wanted to go home, Lavan says to Yaakov Avinu, I see you yearn to go back to your father's home. And the word in Hebrew for yearning is nichsof nichsafta leveis avicha, from the root kesef. That's what it means. Zahav, which is gold, breaks into two Aramaic words. You know what it is? Zeh, this, hav, give me. That's what zahav is. So kesef and zahav, that's a natural desire people have. You know the story about the lawyer? There's a guy gets a call from the Jewish United Fund. The guy says to him on the phone, Mr. Bernstein, our records show that you're earning upwards of $700,000 a year, and you haven't made a donation this year to the JNF. So Bernstein says to him, yeah, do your records also show you that I have a mother in an old age home? Do your records also show you that I have a brother who's a disabled Vietnam War vet? Do your records also show you that I have a sister who's a widow with 4 kids? And if they can't get a dime out of me, what makes you think you will? So, people, there is a very, very strong attachment to money. People are very, very, very much attached to money. There's another story. What do you call it? Rabbi Yankel Galinsky. Rabbi Yankel. They also tell a story about a lawyer who was lying in a hospital bed looking at a Bible. And he's on the way out. He doesn't have too much time left. They said to him, wow, you look like, wow, a lawyer with a Bible. I didn't know you're so religious. He says, I'm not. I'm just looking for some loopholes. So there's a famous story about a guy. Who decided he wants to rob a bank. Problem is, when you rob a bank, security guys, this, that, and the other. So the guy comes up with a brilliant idea. He dresses himself up in he gets a police uniform. Nobody bothers with cops. He gets a police uniform, goes walking in, sees the security guard, says good morning to the security guard, walks right past him, goes up to the counter, and he gets to the counter, he pulls out a gun, and he says, okay, lady, start filling up the bag. Everything, empty the drawer into the bag. So she's, she got instructions, you got to fill up the bag, okay? And he's watching her fill the bag. Just then he feels another gun. He feels a gun in his gut. And he turns around, some guy wearing T-shirt and jeans. And he says, what's going on? Put hands up. Puts his hand up, what's going on? He says, I'm an undercover cop. I'm an undercover cop, but I got you. All right? So he pulls out a handcuffs, and he cuffs himself to the guy and says, let's go off to the police station. They start walking outside. And as they're walking down towards the police station, guy comes walking towards them. It turns out to be the upstairs neighbor of this undercover cop. And he looks at it and goes, ooh, there's his neighbor with the T-shirt and jeans being led off by a policeman with a handcuff. I can't believe it. I mean, this guy was the nicest guy, nice family. You never know with people. See, I always say you never know. The guy looks at me and says, no, Bernie, this isn't what you think it is. I'm a policeman. I never told you that because it's undercover. This guy was robbing the bank. Now, the robber knows he's going to jail, but he figures, listen, I'm going to jail. I may as well take him down with me because are you going to believe him or you're believing this guy? Look at him and look at me. Who's the robber? Who's the cop over here? The guy says, no, Bernie, don't believe it. I'm telling you. The guy says, and Bernie doesn't know what to believe, right? Finally, he's like, oh, okay, if you say so. You can see the he's skeptical. So he says, well, I'll prove it to you. There's only one way to prove who's the cop and who's the robber. The proof is, who's got the key to the handcuffs? He pulls out, he says, I got the key to the handcuffs. That means I'm leading him. He's not leading me. Right? In life, we are being led around. One of the things that leads us around is money, right? It's called the evil inclination, and it's a strong one. My father tried drilling into my thick skull growing up that when it comes, he always said to me, when it comes to money, there are 2 aspects of life. There's how people behave and how people behave around money. He said, and it's a completely different set of rules. You could be a person and you're a person around money, and it's just a completely different set of rules. So the Torah is teaching you over here when it comes, there's a big temptation when you're a businessman, you want to make a sale, you're not allowed to cheat people. You have to be very, very careful in money matters. Okay. Any questions on that? Anybody have a question? Okay.